Did you know you can learn a lot about your health in the future by your fitness today? There comes a time in most people's lives where their motivation for exercise, for eating well, shifts from pure aesthetics or performance and moves towards a focus on long-term health. And when you get to this point, you start to see a shift in your training, in your exercise, and a shift in your future priorities. And while the enemies to our future health can sometimes be hidden in the present day, there are some clues that we can pick up from our abilities today that can tell us about our health in the future. As part of the work that we do with our clients at Range of Motion, we profile these individuals to work out where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and then this allows us to put together a plan in terms of what we should be focusing on to improve their long-term health. And this profiling results in a 4-letter fitness profile. These 4 letters are W, which stands for work capacity. They're A, which is absolute strength. They are R, which is relative strength and stamina, and P, which is power. And we can arrange these 4 letters into 24 different combinations, like ARPW, WPRA, and another 22 combinations that we can have, which rank the strengths and weaknesses from the element of fitness that the individual is weakest at through to that which is the greatest strength for them. And while this gives a really good instantaneous insight into what's happening in their bodies today, as we talked about, it can also give some clues as to what's happening in the future. So let's explore these 4 letters and establish what having that letter as a weakness is going to mean about the future of your health. Now, the idea here is not to fearmonger. It's not to scare you about what may be in your future, but to give you a bit of an advanced warning so you can really double down on those weaknesses and improve that long-term health. So for each of these 4 letters, absolute strength, your power, your work capacity, and your relative strength and stamina, we'll talk about how this will impact both your lifespan, how long you'll live, but maybe more importantly, your health span as well, how long you will live happy and healthy and able to maintain function. And for each of these 4 letters, we will talk about some functional capacities that may drop, things in your future that you may not be able to do with this weakness, and also some of the chronic conditions you may be predisposed to if this letter is your weakness. So let's start with A, that is absolute strength, your ability to lift a weight, to lift a load that isn't your own body. And these are the main things that a weakness in this area can cause problems with later in life from a functional capacity. Standing or sitting to a low chair or couch, or standing or sitting from the toilet. Maybe getting in and out of the car. Any sort of gardening, moving around heavy pots, or moving potting mix or soil. If you're traveling, maybe carrying luggage and putting it in the overhead compartment. Carrying shopping, opening jars, carrying pets or your grandkids around. Things around the house like cleaning and taking the bins out. Maybe in the kitchen, lifting heavy pots and pans. A weakness in absolute strength can also cause problems with your balance. Things like stepping in and out of the shower or the bath and being able to recover if you catch your foot on an uneven surface. Again, around the house, lifting things onto high shelves, getting things out of low cupboards, and generally being able to move objects or furniture around the home. If we now look into chronic conditions that are predisposed, if you have a weakness in this absolute strength, these are things that are going to cause long-term damage to your health. And they kick off with various forms of metabolic disease, things like type 2 diabetes, which can increase if you have low lean muscle mass. Things like osteoporosis or low bone mineral density. If you're not putting that load through your bones through some sort of resistance training where you're lifting weights, you can start to lose the density in your bones. And finally, arthritis, joint pain and lower back pain. If we have strong muscles, they can help to stabilize the joints and help to take the pain and the load away from some of these other structures around our joints and around our spine. So if we now move to people who, when we profile their health and fitness, have a weakness in their relative strength and stamina, that is their ability to lift their own body weight. And if you have this weakness today, in the future, you may have trouble getting on and off the floor. Maybe you're playing with kids or pets. You're going to have trouble climbing ladders. You're going to have trouble playing in the playground or climbing trees with your children or your grandkids. You may struggle with things like hanging out the washing, with things like doing your hair, with cleaning the house, and with washing the car. And if you have this weakness in your relative strength and stamina, there are also a range of chronic conditions you may be facing. Again, we can look at metabolic disease, things like the type 2 diabetes we already talked about, hypercholesterolemia, and other conditions which are associated with your resting metabolic rate. And again, arthritis and joint pain. A lot of the bodyweight movements we can do can really help to create strength and stability around the joints in your body so your muscles stay strong and look after the inner structures in those joints. So now we move on to a weakness in your power, and power is not just strength but also the ability to move fast, to be able to move a load, whether it's an external load or your own body weight, to be able to move that quickly. If you have a weakness here today, it may predispose you to issues like falls and trips in your future. If you are not fast and explosive, if you're walking along an uneven surface, you catch your toe and you start to fall, you won't be able to move fast enough to stop that fall. More power means more speed and therefore the ability to stop that fall before you hit the ground. Improvements in power will make it easier for you to walk up and down stairs, to be able to balance and to be able to walk on uneven surfaces. If you can't move quickly, you may not be able to move fast enough to stop kids or grandkids or pets from running onto traffic or into harm's way. That speed and that power really is vital to be able to protect the people around you well into old age. If you want to play sport with your kids or your grandchildren, if you want to throw the ball for your kids or for pets, you want to throw a stick for the dog, power is a vital element of this. And any sort of daily functional activities that require some sort of coordination can all be improved in the future by improving your power today. If you have a weakness in your power in terms of the chronic conditions you may be predisposed to in the future, we can look at all sorts of degenerative or long-term diseases which cause some sort of loss of function in the body. Things like dementia. In terms of the chronic conditions you may be predisposed to, you may be looking at some sort of neurological or some sort of degenerative disease. Now, while improving your power may not prevent the onset of these conditions, it can help to mitigate some of the symptoms if you are diagnosed with one of these forms of disease. These can include things like stroke, muscular dystrophy, Parkinson's disease, cerebral palsy, and multiple sclerosis. You can also be facing problems with osteoporosis, osteopenia, low bone mineral density, because a lot of the time your power training will involve some sort of external load or weight or some sort of impact with the ground, which is excellent for improving the density of your bones. And finally, let's talk about a weakness in your work capacity. That is your ability to move around and do activities of daily living without getting out of breath too much. If you have a weakness in this today, in the decades of your future, you may be predisposed to issues like not being able to walk upstairs or up hills or on the beach or go for long hikes without getting out of breath. Walking the dog, cycling, and cleaning the house can all start to become major issues. Playing with kids, playing with pets, going shopping can all become problems. And of course, if your work capacity is low, your ability to have sex is going to be impacted as well. In terms of the chronic diseases this can predispose you to, we have the various forms of heart disease, infarction, and other associated conditions which are resulting from a reduction in your work capacity. And then we move on to pulmonary diseases. Those are diseases associated with the breathing system, with your lungs. These can be issues like obstructive and restrictive pulmonary diseases and things like asthma. And finally, into immunological disorders. These are things like fibromyalgia and cancer, associated conditions which we can drastically reduce the risk of if you have good work capacity, if that cardiorespiratory fitness is kept high. So how can we address these problems? How can we take what we know about ourselves today and extrapolate that out into the future? Well, it's very simple. We need to work on our weaknesses. This, of course, is great advice for someone who is trying to be a well-rounded individual and athlete who is strong and powerful and can move their body weight and has good cardiorespiratory endurance. But it also becomes a major issue, as we've seen, when we look into the crystal ball as to what we are doing in our future. So identify those weaknesses. You should really double down and focus on them. Not only are they the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest thing to improve, but they are the things that will have the greatest impact over your future health.